France is to ban non-essential travel to and from the UK to try to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. From Saturday, only those with compelling reasons will be allowed in. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said EU leaders meeting in Brussels will do everything to ensure the inviolability of Europe's borders amid concern over a build-up of Russian troops near Ukraine. Russia denies planning any invasion. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of pushing Ukraine towards NATO membership. Speaking at a joint news conference with NATO Secretary-General in Brussels, he also said Ukraine was hoping to improve cooperation with NATO in the Black Sea region. Thousands of people are seeking refuge from Super Typhoon Rai, which is battering the southern Philippines. The Red Cross said it was one of the strongest typhoons this year.
We start here in Japan, where officials have reported a case of the Omicron coronavirus variant in the capital. A woman in her 20s who lives in Tokyo was confirmed to be infected with the strain on Thursday. She returned from the United States on December 8th and tested negative for the coronavirus upon arrival. But she developed a fever the next day while isolating at home. She tested positive for the coronavirus on Monday, and her sample was sent for further analysis. A man in his 20s who also lives in Tokyo met her on December 8th and 9th, and he's regarded as having had close contact with her. The man tested positive for the coronavirus on Wednesday. His sample is now being analyzed. The man went to watch a soccer match at a stadium near Tokyo on Sunday. Officials are calling on about 80 people who watched the game near him to take a virus test. The top government spokesperson says the measures taken to detect Omicron at the country's borders are working.
The infected person tested positive during the 14-day self-quarantine period. We have identified the person who was in close contact with her. We don't regard the case as one of so-called community transmission.
Health Ministry officials say a staff member at a quarantine station at Kansai International Airport in Osaka has been confirmed to be infected with the Omicron variant. This is the first Omicron case in a quarantine official. Experts advising the ministry say when an Omicron infection is confirmed, people who've been near the infected person should be tested regardless of how long they were in contact or whether they were wearing masks. The experts are also warning the number of new coronavirus cases in Japan is showing signs of rebounding, though it still remains low. Authorities across Japan confirmed 190 infections on Thursday. There were 2 deaths. Tokyo reported 30 new cases. The daily tally in the capital hit the 30 mark for the first time in 5 weeks. Now, the Omicron variant is also a concern for people involved with the Beijing Winter Olympics. The Games open in 50 days, and organizers say they're stepping up their precautions.
We continue to observe and evaluate the possible impact of the Omicron on the Winter Olympics.
China reported its first confirmed Omicron cases this week, 1 each in the cities of Tianjin and Guangzhou. The Beijing Olympic organizers say they'll isolate athletes, team officials, and other personnel in a bubble. On Monday, they released the second edition of the playbook that sets out coronavirus countermeasures. The playbook strongly recommends booster vaccinations. The world's top disease experts are trying to figure out how to prevent an Omicron disaster. It's been 3 weeks since the new variant was first reported in South Africa. NHK World's Honda Mina spoke to a public health expert there to find out what the world can learn from the country's experience.
South Africa has been dealing with a spike in cases for the past 3 weeks. Dr. Wasila Jasad monitors hospitalizations. She noticed something changing in the province, where the variant that would come to be known as Omicron was first detected.
Daily increases in cases has seemed to plateaued. So we are optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that we are reaching a peak in the wave in Gauteng.
Jasad cautions that it's too soon to draw conclusions.
Some patients have asymptomatic or mild disease, some have more severe disease, some die. In South Africa, there does appear to be a lower risk of hospitalization and lower severity of disease. However, this may be due to prior immunity from previous infection or vaccination. However, it may be different in other countries that have a different context.
Jasad has seen a rise in hospitalizations among children. She says most are only in hospital for a short time. Still, she concludes children have lower immunity from previous infections. That's on top of low vaccination coverage. The world's richest nations have not done enough to protect the most vulnerable populations. The WHO warns that Africa may not be able to vaccinate 70% of its population until 2024. Jasad says COVID-19 is the world responsibility.
So I think it's in everyone's interest to ensure all countries have access to vaccines, have high vaccination coverage so that we can limit transmission and limit the emergence of new variants.
The holidays are right around the corner. Jasad says basic precautions like masks and ventilation can help us all prevent a massive surge and protect our loved ones. Honda Mina, NHK World.
The Bank of England has tightened its monetary policy for the first time in more than 3 years in an effort to manage inflationary pressure. The UK's central bank raised its key interest rate to 0.25%, up from a record low of 0.1%. Britain's consumer price index rose 5.1% in November as economic activity resumed. The figure far exceeds the 2% target set by the BOE. The country is seeing a surge in the number of Omicron cases. Some analysts had speculated the central bank would leave the interest rate untouched to offset possible adverse effects on the economy. Police in Australia say 4 children have died after falling to the ground from an inflatable castle blown away by the wind. The fatal accident occurred Thursday at a primary school in the city of Devonport in the Australian island state of Tasmania. The police say a gust of wind swept up the castle and other objects while school children were playing on them. 9 children plunged about 10 meters to the ground. The police say 5 of them were seriously injured and are being treated in hospital. The inflatable castle had been set up for children as part of activities celebrating the last day of school before the summer holiday.
Young children on a fun day out together with their families, and it turns to such horrific tragedy at this time of year. It just breaks your heart.
The Prime Minister said the central government would work closely with local officials to provide necessary support. In other news, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen has met with a group of visiting French lawmakers. She expressed hope France and the European Union will further boost ties with Taiwan. Tsai met on Thursday in Taipei with the nonpartisan group from the French National Assembly, which is the lower house of France's parliament. Tsai said Taiwan-France relations have developed dramatically this year, and she hopes to welcome French cabinet ministers to Taiwan in the near future. She also noted France will hold the rotating presidency of the EU in the first half of next year.
Under the leadership of France, we hope the EU will continue to promote negotiations on a bilateral investment agreement with Taiwan to open a new cooperative relationship.
Former Environment Minister François de Rugy said he hopes productive cooperation can be promoted between France and Taiwan, especially on semiconductors. He also stressed the importance of cooperation on climate change. The French lawmakers also plan to meet government ministers during their stay in Taiwan, which lasts until Sunday. Former U.S. Ambassador to Japan, Caroline Kennedy, looks set to serve in another nation the U.S. sees as an important ally. The White House says President Joe Biden has nominated her as ambassador to Australia. Kennedy is the daughter of the late President John F. Kennedy. She was ambassador to Japan for more than 3 years from 2013. Last month, Japan decorated her with the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun for her contributions to bilateral relations. Kennedy said in a statement she looks forward to collaborating with the government of Australia. Biden also nominated former Olympic figure skater Michelle Kwan as ambassador to Belize. Both nominations need approval from the Senate. Japan has hit its annual goal of 1 trillion yen, over $8.7 billion, in exports of food items, along with farm, forestry, and marine products. The Finance Ministry released trade statistics for November on Thursday. They show exports of food items stood at about $790 million. The total figure for food items and non-food farm, forestry, and marine products from January through October amounts to $8.5 billion. The combined sum takes the total beyond the government's annual target. The ministry says strong online sales of beef and sake in the United States and Asia drove this year's numbers. It also says exports for the restaurant industries in the U.S. and China were up as more people started dining out. The government is planning to double its export goal by 2025, but this will depend on how open nearby markets are to Japanese products. China and Taiwan are among 14 Asian economies that have kept restrictions on food imports from Japan in place since the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. Shifting now to the weather, a violent typhoon is bringing intense winds and torrential downpours to the Philippines. Our meteorologist Jonathan Noah has the details for there and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, Rai has made landfall over the Philippines and is bringing with it some significant rainfall and dangerously strong winds, and it will continue to batter the central and southern Philippines as we go through the overnight period and through the day on Friday. Way before it even made landfall, some areas receiving so much rainfall, it flooded. Tens of thousands of people had to be evacuated to get them out of the area so that as the storm approached, they would be able to get to safety. But yes, major flooding situations taking place, and we are talking about more heavy rainfall. Overnight, through the day on Friday, we have to look towards Saturday for the storm finally gets out of the area as a whole. But look at this, that core expected to really dump that rainfall with the strong winds. It is likely to weaken over time, and then by the time we go into the weekend, the first part of next week, it is expected to make a turn toward the north, toward China. So we will have to watch and see how that storm continues to operate. Meanwhile, north into the East Asia, we are looking at high pressure across China with a low pressure system rolling across Japan. We're looking at rain as we go through the day on Friday. It's going to be wet, and we're also talking about some snow up toward the north. And behind it, we're talking about some real cold air coming across East Asia, across China and into the Korean Peninsula, so be on the lookout for that. And then Japan will also see that colder air. We're talking about some snow really picking up, especially for Hokkaido and along the northeastern areas of the country. Snow in Sapporo, rain in Tokyo for Friday, and then we're talking about highs down to the single digits on Saturday with overnight lows getting quite chilly. We had some intense thunderstorms across the Central Plains and also into the Midwest as this low that really developed pushes toward the north and east. We're talking about some snow and some strong winds into eastern areas of Canada with some more rain along the eastern portion of the United States as we go through the day on Thursday. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.